The draft National Security Act 2023, Consequential Amendment of Primary Legislation Regulations 2025.
Is it the wish of the committee that both instruments be debated together? Aye. I will now call the Minister to move the first motion and to speak to both instruments. At the end of the debate, I will put the question on the first motion and then ask the Minister to move the second motion formally. I call the Minister to move the first motion.
Thank you, Chair. I beg to move that the committee has considered two statutory instruments, namely the Police Act 1997, Authorisations to interfere with property, relevant offence regulations 2025, and the National Security Act 2023, Consequential Amendment of Primary Legislation Regulations 2025. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Both of these instruments, which were laid before the House on the 29th of October 2024, relate to the National Security Act. This Act, which received royal assent in July 2023, includes a number of measures to protect the public, disrupt the full range of modern-day state threats, and modernise our counter-espionage laws. Among these measures is a prohibited places regime, which includes a suite of tools and offences to protect and capture harmful activity in and around some of the UK's most sensitive sites, including by modern threats such as unmanned aircraft, more commonly known as drones. It is essential that we make these two amendments to ensure consistency of approach to consequential amendments in both English and Welsh versions of related legislation, and to ensure our law enforcement have the right tools to do their critical work. The first instrument, the Police Act 1997, adds drone-specific offences under the National Security Act of 2023 to the list of relevant offences in the Police Act of 1997. The Police Act of 1997 provides police and other authorised officials with the legal authority to employ counter-drone equipment to detect and prevent the use of drones in the commission of relevant offences. This amendment is essential to enforce the National Security Act, as it ensures police and other authorised officials can authorise the appropriate technical tools to tackle and combat drone misuse. If we do not proceed with this legislation, there may be some instances where an offence under the National Security Act of 2023 is committed, but the police are unable to authorise the use of their equipment. The second instrument, National Security Act 2023, Consequential Amendment of Primary Legislation Regulations 2025, amends the Welsh language version of the Public Services Ombudsman (Wales) Act of 2019. In December 2023, when changing the English language version of the Act through the National Security Act 2023, Consequential Amendments of Primary Legislation Regulations 2023, the corresponding change was not made to the Welsh language version due to an oversight. This instrument will correct this oversight, ensuring there is no misunderstanding when consulting the Welsh language version of the Act regarding the ability to disclose information obtained in the course of an investigation by the Public Services Ombudsman, if required in relation to a prosecution for offences under the National Security Act of 2023. I hope, Mr Chair, I have made clear from my remarks that these regulations are simply ensuring the correct application and enforcement of primary legislation that has already been agreed by Parliament. Passing them is an important step to correcting an inaccuracy and enforcing primary legislation. I beg to move.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft National Security Act 2023, Consequential Amendment of Primary Legislation Regulations 2025. I call Matt Vickers, Shadow Minister.
Thank you. It's welcome to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Mundell. With regards to draft National Security 2023, Consequential Amendment of Primary Legislation Regulations 2024, as the Minister has rightly pointed out, this regulation is a simple but necessary change to ensure the regulations work effectively across the UK. The National Security Act was an appropriate response to the threat of hostile activity from states targeting the UK's democracy. Correcting the error of not altering the Welsh version is a necessary change to ensure that information is disclosed. Therefore, we fully support the change and will not take up any further time of the committee on this regulation. With regards to the Draft Police Act 1997, Authorisations to interfere with property, relevant offence, Regulations 2025, the comments made by the Minister recognise the importance of upholding our national security and taking steps to mitigate the risks posed by new technologies. Around the world, including recently on the east coast of America, we've seen how drones can cause confusion and undermine people's confidence in security. Therefore, we must take all necessary steps to uphold our national security and provide the police with the powers to act where drone activity could pose a threat. For this reason, we support the regulation. Our position is consistent. Where new technology poses a clear threat, the police should have the powers to act. While we support the regulatory changes, I would ask the Minister to elaborate on a couple of matters which I'm sure would provide reassurance to drone hobbyists. I'm confident that the vast majority of people will not have any issue with these regulations and seek to avoid creating any inconvenience. However, I'd ask the Minister what action will be taken to clarify how authorities will notify hobbyists about prohibited areas. While many sites may rely on signage or calls to the police, will the Minister consider how to effectively communicate which sites are designated as no-fly zones? Furthermore, will the Minister ensure that the drone hobbyist community is informed that security personnel will have the authority to ask individuals to move on and that such authority will not be misused by non-prohibited buildings? I raise this point because I believe it's in all our interests to ensure the police and court time is not wasted on cases which could have been resolved with clearer communication. Thank you.
Minister to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, can I say I'm very grateful to the Shadow Minister for the constructive tone of his response today. I think this is perhaps the third statutory instrument that we have done together, and he's always asked entirely sensible, reasonable questions, and I'm grateful for his approach. He rightly made the point about the need to ensure that the police have the technological capabilities that they need in order to address a developing technological threat. And we've seen in recent times, and this has been very much in the public domain, some of the concerns that have been expressed around drone activity. But he's absolutely right to make the point about ensuring that drone hobbyists, and there are a number, both nationally and I know in my own constituency as well, a number of individuals who rightly take the opportunity to use drones in an entirely responsible and reasonable way. He's right to ensure that we take every step to ensure that those who do seek to use drones, the drone hobbyists, are able to do so in a way that does not fall foul of the legislation. Because I think he is entirely right to make this point, that the last thing that we want is unnecessary pressures both on the police and the courts. So what I will do is I will take away that point and reflect on it further. I will satisfy myself that there is work underway, both locally, regionally and nationally, to satisfy the points that he has raised. And if I think that there is a need to come back to him on those points, then I certainly will do. But I'm grateful to him for raising them today. I think, Chair, in closing, I'd just like to reiterate that these instruments provide essential updates to allow the correct application and enforcement of the National Security Act of 2023. The amendment to the Police Act is essential to ensure that police and authorised officials have the right tools to tackle drone misuse. The consequential amendment will ensure that existing primary legislation will continue to function properly. The amendment to the Public Services Ombudsman Wales Act is essential to ensure correct application of the rules of disclosure in relation to offences contained in the National Security Act of 2023. And as such, I beg to move.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft National Security Act 2023 Consequential Amendment of Primary Legislation Regulations 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. And we come to the second.
The Draft Police Act 1997, Authorisations to interfere with property, relevant offence, Regulations 2025.
Minister to move formally.
I beg to move formally.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft Police Act 1997, Authorisations to interfere with property, relevant offence regulations 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.